The universe was full of life. This was something the galactic conquered had known for thousands of years. 12 different species had joined together to form this great alliance. They controlled hundreds of star systems. They had ships that could travel faster than light. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They believed they were the masters of everything. The conquered had a simple way of dealing with new species. When they found a new civilization, they would send a fleet to study them. If the new species was weak, the conquered would take their resources. If they were strong, the conquered would offer friendship, but in truth, friendship meant control. The conquered did not have equals, they only had subjects. When their long-range sensors detected signals coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system where they were not excited, the signals were primitive, radio waves, television broadcasts. The technology was laughably basic compared to conquered standards. The planet's inhabitants had not even colonized their own moon properly. They had only visited it a few times and left some flags behind. The conquered High Council met to discuss this new discovery. Representatives from all 12 species sat in a great circular chamber on the capital world of Thesson Prime. Holographic displays showed images of the blue planet and its inhabitants. They call themselves humans, said the Serani ambassador, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. His name was Velkith, and he was known for his cruel smile and his love of power. They are divided into many nations. They fight among themselves constantly. They have primitive nuclear weapons, but no space-based defenses worth mentioning. Another easy addition to the conquered, said the Mordith representative, a being that looked like a large insect with glowing eyes. We should send an assessment fleet. Agreed, said Velkith. I will personally oversee this operation. These humans will learn their place in the galaxy soon enough. Council voted in favor of the assessment. Velkith smiled his cruel smile and began preparing his fleet. 3 months later, the Sciony assessment fleet arrived at the edge of the human solar system. 20 warships, each one capable of leveling a city in minutes, took positions around the outer planets. Velk sat in his command chair aboard the flagship and studied the human transmissions. His communication officers had intercepted as the humans had detected them. Their primitive telescopes and radio dishes had picked up the conquered ships. Already messages were flying between human governments. Some were panicked, some were excited. Some called for peace, some called for war. They are confused, Belk said to his officers. They do not know if we are friends or enemies. Let us introduce ourselves. He ordered his communication officers to broadcast a message to Earth. The message was simple. It announced that the galactic conquered had arrived to assess humanity for possible inclusion in their alliance. It spoke of peace and cooperation. It spoke of sharing technology and knowledge. It was a lie. Of course, Velkith had no intention of treating humans as equals. He saw them as resources to be exploited. Their planet was rich in minerals. Their population could provide workers for conquered mining operations. Their primitive nature made them perfect subjects for the more advanced species. The humans responded with cautious optimism. They sent back messages of welcome. They spoke of their dreams of meeting other intelligent life. They offered to send representatives to meet With the conquered fleet, Velk found their hope amusing. He had done this many times before. Primitive species always started with hope, then came fear, then came submission. A human delegation was sent to meet with the conquered. 3 small ships carrying diplomats and scientists traveled to the outer solar system. Velkith received them aboard his flagship. He towered over the small humans with his forearms crossed. He did not offer them seats. He did not offer them food or drink. He simply looked down at them with his cold, silver eyes. Your species has potential, he said, through a translation device, but you are young, weak, divided. The conquered can help you become something greater. All we ask in return is your cooperation. The lead human diplomat was a woman named Sarah Chen. She was small and thin, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She did not seem afraid of, which annoyed him slightly. We are honored by this offer, she said carefully, but we would like to understand the terms better. What exactly does cooperation mean? It means you will provide resources and workers for conquered operations. It means your military forces will serve under conquered command. It means your governments will follow conquered law. Sarah Chen's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Check, that sounds less like cooperation and more like submission. Velkath's cruel smile widened. You are perceptive. For a primitive, yes, you could call it submission, but what choice do you have? We have the power to destroy your entire civilization. We are offering you survival. You should be grateful. The human delegation returned to Earth with Velkath's demands. The response came 3 days later. It was not what Velkath expected. The humans refused, not just one nation but all of them. For the first time in their history, every human government agreed on something. They would not submit to the conquered. They would not give up their freedom. They asked the conquered to leave their solar system peacefully. Velk was shocked. Then he was amused. Then he was angry. They refuse, he said to his officers. Was these primitive creatures refuse? The mighty conquered, they have no idea what they are dealing with. Perhaps they need a demonstration, suggested his second in command. Velkath nodded slowly. Yes, a demonstration, something to show them the consequences of defiance. He studied his tactical displays. The human moon had a research station on it, a small facility with about 200 personnel, scientists and support staff, families, children. It was perfect. Target the lunar research station, Belth ordered. Destroy it completely. Leave no survivors. His weapons officer hesitated. Sir, that facility has no military value. There are civilians there, children. I know. Velkath said coldly. That is the point. The humans need to understand that defiance has consequences. Destroy it. The weapon fired. A beam of concentrated energy crossed the void of space and struck the human lunar station. The structure vanished in a flash of light and heat. 217 people died in an instant. 43 of them were children. Velkath broadcast a message to Earth immediately after the strike. This is the price of defiance. You have 1 week to accept our terms or we will destroy more. Your choice. He expected panic. He expected begging. He expected immediate surrender. What he got was silence. For 3 days Earth did not respond. No messages, no transmissions. The human government stopped communicating with each other over open channels. The Planet went dark. Velkith was confused. At first, then he decided the humans were simply too shocked to respond. They were probably arguing among themselves about what to do when they would surrender soon. They always did. On the fourth day, one of his officers noticed something strange. Human military movements had changed. Ships were being moved, troops were being mobilized, but they were not preparing defenses. They were preparing something else. What are they doing? Velkith asked. Unknown. Sir, their communications are now completely encrypted. We cannot intercept their messages. Primitive species cannot create encryption. We cannot break. Normally no, but the humans seem to have improved their systems rapidly. This made Velkith uncomfortable, but he pushed the feeling aside. What could primitive humans possibly do against conquered warships? On the seventh day, the silence ended. Single transmission came from Earth. It was broadcast on every frequency in every language the conquered used, and it was not a surrender. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a promise. You killed our children. We are coming. Velkith stared at the message on his display screen. He read it again. Then he laughed. They are coming. Coming where? Coming how? They have no ships capable of reaching us. They have no weapons capable of hurting us. This is the desperate threat of a dying species. His officers laughed with him, but some of their laughs sounded nervous. 1 hour later, the long-range sensors detected movement from Earth. Velkith ordered an image on the main display screen. What he saw made his laughter die in his throat. Ships, hundreds of ships. They were launching from every continent on the planet. They were crude vessels, clearly built in haste. Some of them looked like modified cargo ships. Some looked like they had been assembled from pieces of different spacecraft. None of them matched the elegant design of conquered warships, but there were so many of them. How is this possible? Velkith demanded. They did not have these ships 7 days ago. They must have been building them in secret. His science officer said, her voice trembling slightly. Hidden facilities, underground construction. They have been preparing for something like this for how long? Years, perhaps decades. It is as if they expected someone to come. Velkith watched the human fleet forming in orbit around Earth. More ships launched every hour. The number passed 300, then 500, then 1,000. This changes nothing, Velk said, though. His voice was less confident. Now our weapons are far superior. We will destroy them easily, sir. His communication officer said, we are receiving another transmission from Earth. It is directed at you personally. Show me. The face of Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, the same diplomat who had visited his ship, but she looked different now. There was no fear in her eyes. There was no hope for peace. There was only cold, absolute determination. Ambassador Velkith, she said, you asked us to be grateful that you offered us survival. You were wrong. Survival means nothing without freedom. You threatened to destroy us if we did not submit. You were wrong about that too. You cannot destroy us. You can only make us angry. She paused and leaned closer to the camera. You killed 217 of our people. 43 of them were children, children who had done nothing to you, children who only wanted to look at the stars. You murdered them to make a point. Her voice dropped lower, colder. We received your message, Ambassador. Now receive ours. Every person on those ships behind me is a volunteer, every single one of them. Asked to go, we had to turn people away. Because we did not have enough ships, do you understand what that means? You did not break our spirit, you united it, you did not create fear, you created rage. We are coming for you, ambassador, not to negotiate, not to surrender. We are coming to show you what happens when you hurt our children. We are coming to teach you that humanity does not forgive, humanity does not forget, and humanity does not show mercy to those who show none to us. The transmission ended. Velkath stared at the blank screen for a long moment around him. His officers were silent. The confident atmosphere on the bridge had changed. Something heavy hung in the air. Something that felt almost like fear. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly. What are your orders? Velkath straightened in his chair. He was Sarani. He was a representative of the mighty conquered. He would not be intimidated by primitive creatures who had just discovered space travel. We will destroy them, he said, all of them. We will burn their fleet, and then we will burn their planet. The conquered does not tolerate defiance. He began giving orders. His fleet moved into attack formation. Weapons were charged. Targeting systems locked onto the approaching human vessels, but deep in his mind, in a place he would not admit existed, Velkath felt something he had not felt in many years. It was small and cold, and it whispered questions he did not want to answer. What kind of species sends volunteers to die in crude ships against superior technology? What kind of species responds to tragedy not with fear but with fury? What kind of species looks at death and says, we are coming, instead of please stop? Human fleet grew closer. Soon the battle would begin. Velkath told himself that victory was certain. He told himself that these primitives would learn their place, but the cold whisper in his mind would not be silent. What if he was wrong? On Earth, in a secret military facility buried deep underground, a group of men and women gathered around a holographic display. They wore no uniforms. They carried no obvious weapons. They looked like ordinary people, teachers, engineers, parents. They were not ordinary. A woman with gray hair and calm eyes addressed the group. Her name was General Catherine Stone. Though she had not used her real rank in many years, she commanded a force that did not officially exist, a force that every major nation had contributed to in secret, a force created for exactly this situation. The fleet will engage the enemy in 16 hours. She said they will lose. We plan for that. The fleet's job is to distract, to damage, to make the enemy think they are winning. She touched a control and the display changed. It showed a small, fast ship vessel designed not for battle but for infiltration. Our job is different. 12 teams, 12 ships. Each team has its own target. You all know your missions. You all know what is expected of you. She looked around the room at the faces of her soldiers, men and women who had trained for years in ways of killing that most humans could not imagine. People who had given up normal lives to become something else, something harder, something darker. The enemy thinks this will be a conventional war. They think they will win with superior firepower. They do not understand humans. They do not understand what we become when our children are murdered. Her voice hardened. We are not going to fight their fleet. We are going to break their spirit. We are going to teach them that there is no safe place, no secure facility, no defended position that can protect them from us. We are going to make them afraid of the dark. She paused. The conquered calls us a primitive species. After we are done with them, they will call us something else. One of the soldiers, a young man with cold eyes and steady hands, has spoke up. What will they call us? General Catherine Stone smiled. It was not a warm smile. Nightmares. The 12 ships launched quietly without ceremony. They slipped away from Earth using routes and methods that conquered sensors could not detect. They scattered across the solar system, each heading toward a different destination. The conquered had come to teach humanity a lesson about power. Humanity was about to teach them a lesson about fear, and the first lesson would be simple. When you hurt human children, you do not face human soldiers, you face human monsters. The special forces were coming, and they would show no mercy, because mercy was for those who deserved it, and they conquered had shown that they deserved none. The conquered strategic intelligence division was the most advanced information gathering organization in the known galaxy. They had agents on every inhabited world. They had technology that could crack any encryption. They had analysts who could predict the actions of entire civilizations. They had never failed to understand an enemy until now. Director Keithall of the Intelligence Division sat in his office on Thesson Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. The human fleet had engaged Ambassador Velkath's forces 12 hours ago. The battle had gone exactly as expected. Human ships, crude and poorly armed, had been destroyed by the dozens. Conquered losses were minimal. By all standard measurements, it was a complete victory, but something was wrong. The humans had not retreated. They had not surrendered, and they had fought until their ships were destroyed. And then the survivors had fought in their escape pods. When conquered soldiers had boarded damaged human vessels to take prisoners, they had found booby-trapped explosives, humans who smiled as they triggered detonation sequences. Keith had seen many species fight against the conquered. He had never seen anything like this. They fight without hope of victory, said one of his analysts, a young Serani female named Telth. Our psychological models cannot explain this behavior. Every other species we have encountered will surrender when defeat is certain. The humans do not surrender. They do not even seem to consider it an option. Perhaps they are simply stupid, Kethel suggested, though he did not believe it himself. No, sir. Your analysis of their communications shows advanced tactical thinking. They know they cannot win these direct engagements. They are fighting anyway. More importantly, they are learning each engagement. They adapt their tactics. They study our weapons. They find weaknesses. What weaknesses? Our technology is far superior. Telveth hesitated. Our technology is superior, yes, but our soldiers are not. Conquered military doctrine relies on overwhelming force. We do not train for prolonged combat against determined resistance. We do not train for enemies who do not fear death. Keithal was about to respond when an urgent message arrived. It was from Outpost Keth 7, a listening station in a system on the edge of human-controlled space. The message was simple: under attack, unknown enemy, need immediate assistance. Then silence. Athel immediately ordered a response fleet to the outpost. While he waited for their report, he reviewed what he knew about Keth 7. It was a well-defended facility. 400 personnel, heavy weapons, multiple layers of security. It should have been able to resist any attack for hours. The response fleet arrived at K7 6 hours. Later, what they found made no sense. The outpost was silent, no signals, no movement. The response fleet commander sent Marines to investigate. What they discovered would change the way the conquered understood this war. All 400 personnel were dead, every single one. But they had not died in battle. There were no blast marks on the walls, no evidence of heavy weapons fire, no signs of a large-scale assault. Instead, the dead had been killed individually. Silently, precisely, throats cut, a neck broken, heart stopped by blades so thin they left almost no wound. Some had died at their stations, never knowing an enemy was near. Some had died in their beds. Some had died in the middle of eating breakfast. The outpost security systems had never detected an intruder. The alarms had never sounded. The defense weapons had never fired. 400 trained military personnel had been killed by a ghost. The response fleet commander found one survivor hiding in a maintenance tunnel, a young communications officer named Verkith, who had been repairing equipment when the attack began. He was shaking so badly he could barely speak. How many were there? The commander asked. How many humans attacked? Verkith looked up with eyes that had seen something terrible. Well, 12, he whispered. There were only 12. The commander did not believe him. He ordered a complete investigation. Forensic teams analyzed every piece of evidence. Security recordings were reviewed frame by frame. The conclusion was impossible to deny. 12 humans had infiltrated the outpost. Without detection, they had spent approximately 6 hours inside the facility. They had killed every single person with quiet efficiency. Then they had left again without detection. Only reason anyone knew they had been there was the bodies they left behind. And they had left a message. Sirani, commander of the outpost, had been found in his office. He was seated at his desk as if conducting normal business. His throat had been cut so cleanly that he had died without making a sound. Pinned to his chest was a piece of paper with words written in Sirani script, in one of many. Director Keith, read the report 3 times. Then he ordered his analysts to find everything they could about human military forces. Every piece of intelligence, every intercepted communication, everything. What they found terrified him. The humans had something called special forces. The translation was approximate, but the meaning was clear. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were warriors trained from a young age in the arts of silent killing. They could survive in any environment. They could use any weapon. They could kill with their bare hands in dozens of different ways. More importantly, they operated differently from normal military forces. They did not fight in large battles. They did not wear uniforms. They did not follow the rules of warfare that the conquered had come to expect. They infiltrated. When they sabotaged, they assassinated. They spread fear. Keithal reviewed the history of human special forces. He learned about units with names like Navy SEALs, Special Air Service, Spetsnaz, and countless others. He read accounts of operations that seemed impossible. Small teams of humans defeating armies, silent kills, the most heavily defended facilities, survival in conditions that would kill. Most species, he also learned something. That disturbed him deeply. Human special forces had been developed over centuries. Of humans fighting other humans, these techniques, these brutal and efficient methods of killing were not created to fight aliens, they were created by humans to fight humans, and if humans were this terrifying to each other, what would they be to the conquered? Kethel called an emergency meeting of the conquered High Council. He presented his findings in a chamber full of representatives who did not want to believe what they were hearing. "You are telling us," said the Mordith representative, "that 12 primitive humans killed 400 of our soldiers. Impossible." "I am telling you what happened," Kethel replied. "I am also telling you that this is only the beginning. Our analysts have identified multiple human special forces, teams that have left Earth. We believe there are at least 12 teams, possibly more. They are not traveling with the main fleet. They are using small, fast ships designed to avoid detection." "Where are they going?" Ambassador Velketh demanded. "We do not know. That is the problem. These humans are trained to operate without communication. They do not send messages we can intercept. They do not follow patterns we can predict. They simply appear, complete their mission, and disappear. Then we must find them and destroy them," Velki said. "Deploy our own intelligence agents. Hunt them down." Kethal shook his head. "Slowly, sir, with respect, you do not understand what we are dealing with. Our intelligence agents are trained to gather information. They are not trained for combat against enemies like this. If we send our agents after these human teams, we will simply be sending them to their deaths. Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest we prepare for a different kind of war, not a war of fleets and firepower, but a war of shadows, a war where the enemy could be anywhere, a war where no one is safe." The council chamber was silent. The representatives looked at each other with expressions ranging from disbelief to growing fear. One voice spoke up. It belonged to Elder Tactician Morph, the oldest strategist in the Conquered. He was a Thessan, a species known for their wisdom and long memories. His scales were gray with age, and his eyes had seen more wars than anyone in the room. "I have studied military history for 300 years, Morth said slowly. "I have analyzed the tactics of every species we have encountered. I thought I understood warfare. I thought I understood how intelligent beings fight." He paused and looked around the chamber. "I was wrong. These humans are something new, something we have never faced before. They are not fighting to win territory. They are not fighting to gain resources. They are fighting because we hurt their children, and there is nothing more dangerous in the universe than a parent seeking revenge." "What are you saying?" Belath asked. "I am saying that we made a terrible mistake. When we destroyed that lunar station, we thought we were showing our power. Instead, we awakened something that will not stop until it has made us pay for what we did. They are primitives," Belth shouted. "They cannot possibly defeat the Conquered, can they?" "Not," Morbith asked quietly. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many Conquered soldiers will refuse to sleep because they fear being killed in their beds? How many will jump at shadows because they have heard stories of humans who appear from nowhere? How many will lose their will to fight because they have seen what these special forces leave behind?" He stood slowly, his old bones protesting. "War is not just about weapons and ships. War is about will, and these humans have a will that I have never seen before. They have taken their pain and turned it into purpose. They have taken their fear and turned it into fury. They do not care if they die as long as they take us. With them, Morboth looked directly at Belk. You destroyed a station full of children. You thought it would make the humans submit. Instead, you gave them something to fight for, something stronger than any weapon we possess. You gave them hatred, and now that hatred is coming for us all. The meeting ended without resolution. The council could not agree on what to do. Some wanted to increase military forces. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to destroy Earth completely before the humans became an even greater threat. But it was already too late for that. Over the next 3 weeks, conquered installations throughout the region began reporting strange occurrences while guards disappeared. During their shifts, equipment malfunctioned in ways that seemed too precise to be accidents. Officers received anonymous messages containing information that only their closest allies should know. Then the body started appearing. A supply convoy stopped at a fuel station and found every worker dead. A military academy discovered that 3 of their instructors had been killed and replaced with false bodies, while the real murders went unnoticed for days. A conquered admiral was found dead in his quarters aboard his own flagship, surrounded by 4 of his best guards, all of them killed without making a sound. Each incident was different. Each victim was different. The only common element was the quiet efficiency of the killings and the messages left behind. So we are everywhere. You cannot hide. This is only the beginning. The conquered military began to crack under the pressure. Soldiers who had never known fear started to panic at small noises. Officers who had commanded thousands refused to sleep alone. Morale dropped across every fleet and installation, and still no one saw the humans responsible. Director Kethel worked desperately to find patterns in the attacks. He analyzed every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every security recording. Slowly he began to understand how the humans operated. They did not simply attack and leave. They studied their targets first. They learned routines. They found weaknesses. They waited for the perfect moment, and when they struck so fast and so silently that their victims often died without knowing they were in danger. But there was something else, something that Kethel found even more disturbing. The humans were not just killing, they were sending a message. Every attack was designed to create maximum psychological impact. Bodies were arranged in specific positions. Messages were written in the victim's own blood. The attacks grew more elaborate, more terrifying, as if the humans were deliberately trying to break the conquered spirit. Kethel presented his findings to Morth privately. The old strategist listened carefully, his ancient eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to span centuries. They are using fear as a weapon, Morth said. It is a human tactic. They call it psychological warfare. The goal is not simply to kill enemies, but to make them afraid, to make them doubt, and to make them question whether fighting is worth the cost. How do we stop it? I do not know. This kind of warfare requires a different kind of response. Our soldiers are trained to fight enemies they can see. They are not trained to fight enemies who could be anywhere. They are not trained to handle constant uncertainty. There must be something we can do. Morth was silent for a long Moment when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with resignation, perhaps, but it will require us to become something we have never been. We will have to learn to be as ruthless as the humans, as patient, as willing to sacrifice everything for victory. He looked at Keithal with eyes that had seen too much. The question is not whether we can win this war. The question is what we will become in the process of fighting it, because if we become like the humans to defeat them, have we truly won anything at all? Meanwhile, far from Thesson Prime, a small ship drifted silently through space. Inside, 12 men and women sat in the darkness, checking their weapons and reviewing their plans. They had completed their first mission at Outpost Keth 7. Now they were heading to their next target. Their commander was a woman named Major Sarah Chen, the same Sarah Chen who had served as a diplomat during first contact. The same Sarah Chen who had looked in the eyes and seen nothing but cruelty. She had volunteered for Special Forces training the day after the lunar station was destroyed. Her sister had worked there. Her 2 nephews, ages 7 and 9, had been among the children who died. She had trained harder than anyone. She had learned every technique of silent killing. She had studied conquered physiology until she knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. She had transformed herself from a woman who sought peace into a weapon that sought only revenge. Now, sitting in the darkness of her ship, she looked at the faces of her team. They all had similar stories. All of them had lost someone. All of them had been changed by loss into something harder, colder, more dangerous. Next target is a command station, she said quietly. 3,000 personnel, heavy security. They think they are safe. She smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. They are wrong. The ship continued its silent journey through space. Behind it, the Concord was beginning to crumble under the weight of its own fear. Ahead, more targets waited to learn what happened when humans decided to stop being civilized. The Special Forces had no mercy left to give. Mercy was a luxury for those who had not seen their children murdered. Mercy was for enemies who deserved it. The conquered deserved only what they had given, and the humans were determined to repay that debt in full. The fortress world of Thesson Prime was supposed to be the safest place in the conquered. It had orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire fleets. It had ground-based weapons that could shoot down anything that got through the orbital defenses. It had an army of 1 million soldiers stationed on its surface. No enemy had ever successfully attacked Thesson Prime in the 3,000 years since it became the capital of the conquered. None of that mattered anymore. For 6 weeks, a single team of 12 human special forces operators had been waging a private war against the planet they had arrived on. A cargo ship disguised as Sereny. Merchants, they had slipped through customs using forge identification documents. They had established a hidden base in the underground tunnels that ran beneath the capital city, and then they had begun their work. The first week, they did nothing visible. They watched. They learned. They mapped patrol routes and identified key targets. They hacked into communication networks and listened to military frequencies. They photographed every important building and memorized every important face. Second week, small things started going wrong. Water purification systems in military barracks began producing contaminated water that made soldiers sick but did not kill them. Power Fluctuations disrupted training. Exercises, supply shipments arrived with critical items missing or damaged. Nothing dramatic, nothing that could be blamed on an enemy, just constant, grinding problems that wore down morale. The third week, the deaths began. Colonel was found in his office with his throat cut. The door had been locked. From the inside, there was no sign of forced entry. The security cameras showed nothing unusual. It was as if a ghost had walked through walls, killed him, and vanished. 3 days later, a general was poisoned at a formal dinner. He died in front of 200 witnesses, and no one saw who put the poison in his drink. Investigation revealed that someone had tampered with his personal cup hours before the event while it sat in a secure storage room that only authorized personnel could access. Week after that, an entire guard squad disappeared during their night patrol. Their bodies were found 3 days later, arranged in a circle in a public park. Their weapons were missing, their uniforms had been taken, their faces showed expressions of absolute terror. Commander Telveth of Thesson Prime Security Forces was going insane trying to catch the humans responsible. She doubled patrols, she tripled security at important locations, she implemented random checks and surprise inspections. Nothing worked. The humans seemed to know about every security measure before it was implemented. They avoided patrols that should have caught them. They slipped through checkpoints that should have been impossible to pass. They killed targets that should have been untouchable. How are they doing this? Telveth demanded at a security briefing. We have 1 million soldiers on this planet. We have the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. How are 12 primitives making fools of us? No one had an answer. The fourth week brought something new. The humans started communicating. Military officers began receiving messages on their personal devices, messages that contained information about their families, their homes, their daily routines. The messages did not contain threats. They did not need to. The message was clear. We know everything about you. We can reach you anywhere. We choose to let you live for now. Sleep became impossible. For many officers, how could you sleep when you knew that humans who could kill anyone were watching you? How could you function when every shadow might hide a killer? Some officers requested transfers to other planets. Some resigned their commissions entirely. Some suffered mental breakdowns and had to be hospitalized. The human team was destroying the command structure of Thesson Prime without fighting a single battle. The fifth week, the humans made their boldest move yet. Elder tactician Morph woke in his private quarters to find a human sitting in a chair beside his bed. The human was a woman with dark hair and cold eyes. She held a knife casually in one hand, as if it were a writing instrument rather than a weapon. Morph's first instinct was to call for help. Then he realized that if this human wanted him dead, he would already be dead. She was here to talk. You are the strategist, the woman said. Her voice was quiet and controlled. Wetter, the one who told the council that killing our children was a mistake. Yes, Morph said. He was surprised by how calm his own voice sounded. Perhaps 300 years of military experience had prepared him for this moment. After all, my name is Sarah Chen. My nephews died on that lunar station. They were 7 and 9 years old. They liked to look at stars and talk about what kind of aliens might be out there. She paused and something flickered in her cold eyes. Pain perhaps, or the memory of pain. Buried deep, I listened to the recording of the council meeting after the attack. You were the only one who understood what was happening. You were the only one who saw us clearly. Is that why you are here to thank me? Sarah Chen smiled. Slightly, it was not a pleasant smile. No, I am here because I believe you are intelligent enough to understand what I am about to tell you. This war is going to end one of two ways. Either the conquered will be destroyed completely, or it will surrender and accept our terms. There is no third option. Your terms, the Sione who ordered the attack on our station, will be handed over for trial. The conquered will pay reparations to the families of those killed. The conquered will recognize human sovereignty and will never attempt to threaten or control us again. That is all. That is all. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We only want justice and security. Accept these terms, and the killing stops. Refuse, and we will continue until the conquered no longer exists. Morth considered her words carefully. You know I cannot make this decision alone. I'm not even on the High Council anymore. I know, but you have influence, you have respect, and you have something that most of your people lack right now, wisdom. She stood and walked toward the window. For a moment she looked out at the city. Lights in her face softened slightly. I used to believe in peace. I spent my whole career trying to build bridges between different peoples. I thought that understanding could solve any conflict. That was before your people showed me what happens when you try to be peaceful with those who see peace as weakness. She turned back to face him. I am not asking you to surrender. I am asking you to end this before more people die on both sides, because if this continues, we will keep killing your people until there are none left. And that will destroy something in us, too, something I'm not sure we can afford to lose. She moved toward the door, then paused. You have 1 week to respond. Broadcast a message on the open frequency saying you want to negotiate. We will hear it, and if we refuse, Sarah Chen looked back at him with eyes that had seen too much death, then we will show your people what humans become when they have nothing left to lose. She opened the door and stepped through. 2 of Morph's personal guards lay unconscious in the hallway. She stepped over them and disappeared into the shadows. Morph sat in his bed for a long time, thinking about what she had said. Then he got dressed and began making calls. The 6th week was the worst. The Conqueror did not respond to the offer. Ambassador Velkith convinced the High Council that negotiating would show weakness. He argued that the humans would eventually run out of supplies or make a mistake that would allow them to be captured. He promised that victory was still possible if they stayed strong. He was wrong. The human team responded to the rejection with a campaign of terror that made everything before seem gentle. They no longer killed quietly in the night. They killed publicly, dramatically, in ways designed to be seen and remembered. A military parade was interrupted when 3 generals collapsed dead on the reviewing stand. Poison introduced into their ceremonial uniforms hours before the event. The crowd watched in horror as the most powerful military leaders on the planet died in front of them. Secure military database was hacked. Personal information on thousands of officers was released to the public. Home addresses, family members, the daily schedules. The message was clear. No one is safe, no one is hidden, we know everything, the main power grid for the capital city was sabotaged for 12 hours. The most important city in the conquered was dark. During those 12 hours, 17 more officers were killed. When the lights came back on, their bodies were found displayed in public places, arranged as warnings. Garrison began to crack. Soldiers refused to go on patrol. Officers refused to leave their quarters. Some units simply walked away from their posts, preferring desertion to the constant fear of death from unseen enemies, and through it all the human team remained invisible. 1,000,000 soldiers searched for them, and no one could find them. They moved through the city like smoke, leaving death and fear wherever they went. On the last day of the 6th week, Commander Telvath finally got a lead. A surveillance camera caught a glimpse of a human face. Analysis revealed a possible hiding location in the old tunnel system beneath the industrial district. Telvath assembled a force of 5,000 soldiers, the best troops remaining on the planet. She personally led them into the tunnels, determined to end this nightmare once and for all. They found the human base. It was empty. The humans had left hours before, somehow knowing that their location had been discovered, but they had left something behind, a message written on the wall in the blood of conquered soldiers. You cannot find us. You cannot stop us. You can only choose. When this ends, every day you refuse to negotiate, more of your people will die. This is not cruelty, this is consequence. Yet you taught us what you do to those who cannot defend themselves. We learned the lesson well. Telv stared at the message for a long time, then she ordered her troops to return to the surface. There was no point in searching the tunnels. The humans could be anywhere by now. When she returned to her headquarters, she found Morth waiting for her. You read the message? He asked. Yes, and Telv sat down heavily. She looked older than she had 6 weeks ago, worn, defeated. They are going to win, she said quietly. Not because they are stronger than us. Not because they have better weapons or more soldiers. They are going to win because they are willing to do whatever it takes, and we are not. What do you mean? I have been studying them, trying to understand how they think, and I finally see it. These humans, these special forces, they have crossed a line that our people cannot cross. They have accepted that they might die, that they probably will die, and they do not care. They care only about completing their mission. She looked at Morth with something like respect. You were right. At the council meeting, war is about will, and their will is stronger than ours because they are fighting for their dead children, and we are fighting for what? Pride, the honor of the conquered. Those things cannot compete with a parent's rage. Morth nodded slowly. Then what do? We surrender. We accept their terms. We hand over Velki and anyone else they want. We pay whatever reparations they demand, and we pray that they are telling the truth when they say they only want justice and security. The council will never agree. Then we go around the council. We contact the other species directly. We make them understand that continuing this war will destroy us all. Someone has to have the courage to admit we were wrong. Morb studied her for a long moment, then he smiled slightly, the first smile he had managed in weeks. You are different from when this started. Commander, we all are. That is what the humans have done to us. They have shown us what we really are when we are pushed to our limits, and I do not like what I see. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at a city that had once seemed invincible. I used to believe that Concord was great, that we were bringing order and civilization to the galaxy. And now I see us clearly. We are bullies. We attacked a peaceful species because we thought they were weak. We killed their children to make a point, and we are surprised that they fight back. She turned to face Morb. Humans are not monsters. They are just showing us what we created. In the tunnels beneath the city, Sarah Chen and her team rested in a new hiding place. They had been on the move, constantly, always one step ahead of their hunters. They were tired. They were running low on supplies, but they were not defeated. The commander is wavering, reported one of her team members, a man who had hacked into Concord communication networks. She is talking about surrender, about going around the council. Good, Sarah Chen said. That means the pressure is working. Do you think they will actually do it? Surrender? Sarah Chen was quiet. For a moment, she thought about her nephews, about their smiles and their dreams of meeting aliens, about how excited they had been when she told them she was going to space to meet new friends. I hope so, she said finally. I'm tired of killing. I want this to be over. I want to go home and remember what it was like to be someone who did not know 40 ways to kill another living being. She looked at her hands that had taken so many lives in the past 6 weeks. But if they do not surrender, we continue until they have nothing left, until every person who supported the attack on our children has paid the price. That is what we signed up for. That is what we promised our dead. Her team nodded. They understood. They all understood. The war would end one way or another, and with peace or with destruction. There was no middle ground. And if destruction was what the conquered chose, then the humans would deliver it without hesitation, without mercy, without regret, because that was what special forces did. They completed the mission no matter the cost, and the mission was simple: make them pay. Concord High Council made their final decision on a cold morning in the capital. Despite everything that had happened, despite the terror and the deaths and the crumbling morale, they voted to continue the war. Ambassador Velketh had convinced them that surrender would destroy the Concord's reputation forever, that other species would see them as weak, that the humans were bluffing about their ability to truly threaten the Concord's existence. He proposed a new strategy: concentrate every available ship at the Sereny home world, create a fleet so massive that the humans could not possibly defeat it, then launch a final assault on Earth and end the human threat permanently. The Council approved the plan by a narrow margin. Ships from every conquered species were recalled to Sereny Prime. Within 2 weeks, a fleet of over 5,000 warships had gathered in orbit around the Silver Skin planet. It was the largest military force ever assembled in Concord history. Velketh stood on the bridge of his new flagship, looking at the endless rows of ships on his display screens. He felt confident again for the first time in months. This was power the humans could not match. This was strength they could not overcome. Let them send their crewed ships, he said to his officers. Let them send their special forces, and against this fleet they are nothing. We will crush them and then burn their home world to ashes. His officers cheered. Morale was high aboard the flagship. The soldiers believed they had finally assembled a force that could end this nightmare. They were wrong. Far from a Serrani Prime, in a small monitoring station, a human intelligence officer watched the conquered fleet gathering. She transmitted the information back to Earth with a single comment attached. They took the bait. 3 days later, the human fleet arrived at Serrani Prime. Velketh was surprised by what he saw. The human fleet was smaller than he expected, perhaps 200 ships compared to his 5,000. Some of them looked damaged from previous battles. Some of them were clearly civilian vessels that had been modified for combat. It was a pitiful force against the might of the conquered. They are insane, Vel said, watching the human ships take position. They cannot possibly think they can defeat us with this. Perhaps they wish to negotiate, suggested his second in command. Then they will be disappointed. We do not negotiate with primitives. The human commander broadcast a message. It was a woman's voice, calm and controlled. Conquered fleet, this is Commander James Patterson of the United Earth Forces. We are not here to fight you. We are here to offer you one final chance to surrender, accept the terms we outlined previously, and this war ends today. Refuse and you will face consequences beyond anything you have imagined. Velketh laughed. Consequences? They threaten us with 200 ships against 5,000. What? They are even more deluded than I thought. He broadcast his response. Human commander, you are surrounded by the greatest fleet ever assembled. You have no possibility of victory. Surrender immediately and we will show you mercy. This is your only warning. The human commander's response was brief. We are not here to fight your fleet. We are just here to watch. Belth frowned. Watch what? Before anyone could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the fleet. Sir, shouted his tactical officer, we are detecting unauthorized personnel aboard multiple ships. What? That is impossible. Confirmed, sir. Security teams on 17 ships are reporting intruders. No, wait, 32 ships, 57 ships. The number keeps growing. Velketh stared at his display in disbelief. Red warning lights were appearing across the fleet. Ship after ship was reporting the same thing. Intruders aboard. Unknown, hostile, security breaches. Where did they come from? His intelligence officer checked the data frantically. Sir, the intruders appear to have been aboard our ships for days, some possibly for weeks. They must have infiltrated during the fleet assembly. That is impossible. We had security checks on every vessel. The humans somehow bypassed them all. They were hiding in cargo holds, maintenance shafts, inside sealed equipment containers. They waited until now to reveal themselves. Velketh felt cold, fear spreading through his chest. How many? Unknown, based on the reports at least several hundred, possibly more. The human commander's words echoed in his mind. We are just here to watch. They were not attacking with ships. They had already attacked days ago, weeks ago. The special forces teams had infiltrated the fleet while it was gathering, and they had waited in silence until the perfect moment. Now, that moment had arrived. Across the conquered fleet, chaos erupted. On the battleship Sword of Siren, 12 human operators emerged from hiding in the engineering section. They moved with practiced efficiency, killing guards and securing critical systems. Within minutes, they had control of the ship's main reactor. They set it to overload and escaped in maintenance pods before The explosion tore the ship apart. On the carrier might of Morkith, a team of 8 humans released a gas into the ventilation system. It was not lethal, but it caused intense disorientation and nausea while the crew stumbled helpless. Through the quarters, the humans moved through the ship systematically, destroying computer systems and weapons. Controls, the carrier drifted dead. Space unable to fight or flee. On the command ship Thunder of the Conquered, the second most powerful vessel in the fleet, a single human operator had hidden inside the wall of the Admiral's quarters for 3 days. She emerged while the Admiral was distracted by the chaos. On his display screens, she killed him silently and took control of the ship's communication systems. Then she broadcast a message to the entire fleet. This is human special forces. We are on your ships. We have been here for days. We know your systems. We know your weaknesses. We know where your families sleep on your home worlds. A pause, filled with screaming alarms and panic voices. Voila, you have 2 choices: surrender now or die. There is no third option. You cannot find us. You cannot stop us. The only question is how many of you want to live. Across the fleet, soldiers who had been confident moments before began to look at each other with fear. Any one of their crew mates could be a hidden human. Any shadow could hide a killer. The enemy was not outside attacking them. Enemy was inside, everywhere and nowhere. The discipline of the conquered fleet shattered. Some ships tried to fight the intruders. These battles were short and brutal. Human operators who had studied conquered ships for weeks knew every weakness, every blind spot, every critical system. They could disable a ship in minutes and escape before anyone could catch them. Some ships tried to flee, but the human operators had sabotaged navigation systems during their hidden days aboard. Ships jumped to random coordinates or found their engines failing. The fleet that had been gathered to destroy humanity was destroying itself. Some ships surrendered. Their crews announced over open channels that they would not fight, that they accepted human terms, that they wanted only to survive. These ships were spared. Velk watched his fleet fall apart around him. In 90 minutes, 60% of his ships were disabled, destroyed, or had surrendered. The greatest military force in conquered history was being dismantled from within by enemies they could not see. How is this possible? He whispered. How did they do this? His tactical officer answered grimly. They planned this for months, sir, maybe years. They knew we would gather our fleet. They knew where we would gather it. They sent their special forces to infiltrate during the assembly process. They used our own strategy against us. But the security checks, their people are trained to hide, sir, to survive. Without movement, without food, without water, they are trained to be patient. To wait. They waited in darkness and silence while we congratulated ourselves on our superior numbers. One of the display screens flickered. A human face appeared. It was Sarah Chen, Ambassador Velkith. She said calmly, I believe we met once before. Do you remember? You told me that humanity should be grateful for the chance to submit. You told me we had no choice. Her expression did not change, but her eyes were cold as deep space. It seems you were mistaken. You have a choice now. Surrender yourself and stand trial for the murder of our people, or continue fighting and watch everything you care about burn. You cannot do this, Velk said. This is Against all laws of warfare, you have. Attacked civilian vessels, you have. Killed non-combatants, you are monsters. Sarah Chen was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. You killed 43 children to make a point about power. Now you want to talk about laws, about non-combatants, about monsters. She leaned closer to the camera. We learned from you, Ambassador. You taught us what happens when you are merciful to the merciless. You taught us what kind of galaxy this is. We were peaceful. Once we believed in diplomacy and understanding. You showed us that was foolish. The screen behind her changed. It showed footage that Velketh recognized, the lunar research station. The moments before its destruction. Children playing in a recreation room. Scientists working in laboratories. Families having dinner together. Then the flash of light. Then nothing. These were our people. Sarah Chen said, our children, our hope. You killed them. Without hesitation, without mercy. Without any thought of who they were or what they might have become. Her voice hardened. So no, Ambassador, we will not show mercy. We will not follow your laws of warfare. We will do whatever is necessary to ensure that no one ever does this to us again. If that makes us monsters, then so be it. We would rather be living monsters than dead civilians. The transmission cut off. Velketh stood alone on his bridge. Around him, his officers were abandoning their posts. His flagship was one of the few ships still functioning, but its crew had lost all will to fight. The human fleet had not fired a single shot, and the conquered armada was destroyed. A security alert sounded. Intruders detected on his ship. Velketh knew what was coming. The humans were on his flagship now, coming for him. Specifically, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He thought about trying to flee. He thought about fighting. He thought about ending his own life rather than being captured. In the end, he did none of these things. He sat in his command chair and waited. When the door opened and human soldiers entered the bridge, Velketh did not resist. He was too tired, too defeated, too empty. Sarah Chen walked in behind the soldiers. She looked at the ambassador, who had destroyed everything she loved. She could have killed him had she wanted to kill him. Every cell in her body screamed for vengeance, but that was not the mission. Ambassador Velketh, she said formally, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be taken to Earth to stand trial. You will face justice for what you have done. Velketh looked up at her. And if I refuse, you do not get to refuse. That is what happens when you lose. She nodded to her soldiers. They secured Velketh and led him away. As they left the bridge, one of her team members spoke quietly. We could have killed him here, made him pay for the children. We could have. Sarah Chen agreed, but then we would be no better than him. He murdered innocents because he thought he was above consequences. We are going to show him that no one is above consequences. Ma, not even us. She looked out at the devastated fleet through the viewport. That is the difference between us and them. They kill because they can. We kill because we must, and when we do not have to, we stop. Is that really the difference? Sarah Chen was quiet for a long moment. I hope so, she said finally, because if it is not, then we have lost something more important than any war. The human fleet moved through the wreckage of the conquered armada. Ships that had surrendered were allowed to limp away. Escape pods were rescued regardless of species. Medical aid was offered to the wounded. The war was not over, but the conquered ability to fight was finished. Their greatest fleet had fallen in 90 minutes, without a single conventional battle. Their leaders were in custody or dead. Their species were already sending messages to Earth begging for peace. The humans had won, not with superior technology, not with superior numbers. They had won with patience and planning, and a willingness to do what was necessary, and now they had a choice to make. What kind of victors would they be? What kind of peace would they build? The answer to that question would determine whether the war had been worth fighting at all. On the human flagship, Commander Patterson received a message from Earth. The governments wanted to know what their terms would be. How much would they demand from the defeated, conquered? Patterson read the message and then walked to where Sarah Chen stood, looking out at the stars. They want to know what we want, he said. What should I tell them? Sarah Chen thought about her nephews, about their dreams of meeting aliens, about how they had believed the universe was full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Tell them we want what we always wanted, she said. Justice for our dead, security for our living, and a chance to finally be the peaceful species we were meant to be. That is all. That is everything. We did not start this war to conquer. We started it to survive. Now that we have survived, we should remember who we were before they made us into this. She turned away from the stars. The special forces can stand down now. We have done what was necessary. Time to find out if we can ever be normal again. Commander Patterson nodded and went to send the message. Sarah Chen remained at the viewport, looking out at the destroyed fleet and the stars beyond. Somewhere out there and on a blue planet circling an ordinary star, children were looking up at the sky and wondering what was out there. She hoped they would never have to find out the way she had. She hoped they could keep their dreams. She hoped peace was really possible, but if it was not, she knew what she was capable of, what all humans were capable of when pushed too far. That knowledge would stay with her forever. The cost of survival, the price of victory, the burden of being human. 5 years had passed since the war ended. The galactic conquered no longer existed. Its 12-member species had gone their separate ways, each dealing with the aftermath of defeat in their own manner. Some had retreated to their home systems, refusing all contact with other species. Some had begun rebuilding their societies with new values and new leaders. Some had reached out to humanity, seeking to understand the species that had broken them. The trial of Ambassador Velki had lasted 8 months. It was broadcast across the galaxy, translated into every known language. Witnesses testified about the destruction of the lunar research station. Survivors from the war described the atrocities ordered by conquered leadership. Evidence was presented showing how the conquered had planned to enslave humanity. Velki never showed remorse. Throughout the trial, he maintained that his actions were justified. He argued that the strong had always ruled the weak, that this was the natural order of the universe. He said that humanity would have been better off as conquered subjects. The verdict was guilty on all charges. The sentence was life imprisonment on a penal colony where Velkith would spend his remaining years doing manual labor. He was not executed. The humans wanted to show that they were different from the conquered, that they could deliver justice without cruelty. Some said this was weakness. Others said It was strength. The debate would continue for generations. Elder tactician Morph had lived long enough to see the new order emerge. He spent his final years writing a comprehensive history of the war, documenting everything that had happened from the Conquered's first detection of human signals to the final surrender. His work became required reading in militaries across the galaxy. In his final chapter, Morph wrote something that would be quoted for centuries. We believe we understood war. We believe that victory belonged to those with superior weapons, superior numbers, superior technology. The humans taught us that we were wrong. Victory belongs to those who fight for something greater than themselves. Victory belongs to those who refuse to surrender even when surrender is the only rational choice. Victory belongs to those who transform their pain into purpose. He died peacefully in his sleep, 6 months after completing his history. His last words were recorded by his attendant. I hope the humans find the peace they deserve, and I hope we learn from them rather than fear them. On Earth, things were changing. The governments of the world had united during the war out of necessity. After the war, they found it difficult to return to their old divisions. A new global government emerged, not by conquest or coercion, but by shared experience. The species that had faced extinction together found it easier to work together than to go back to fighting each other. The special forces teams were disbanded. Most of the operators returned to civilian life, trying to find normally after years of killing. Some succeeded, some did not. The psychological cost of what they had done weighed heavily on many of them. Sarah Chen received medals and honors from governments around the world. She refused them all. She did not want to be celebrated for what she had done. She wanted only to be left alone with her memories and her regrets. She took a position teaching diplomacy at a small university. She told her students that war was always a failure of communication, that violence should always be the last resort, not the first, or that the true strength of a species lay not in its ability to destroy, but in its ability to build. Her students often asked about her experiences during the war. She rarely spoke about them. When pressed, she would say only this: I did what was necessary. I hope none of you ever have to do the same. But sometimes late at night she would visit the memorial that had been built for the victims of the lunar station attack. 217 names were carved into black stone. 43 of them were children. 2 of them were her nephews. She would sit there in the darkness and remember them, their laughter, their curiosity, their belief that the universe was full of friends waiting to be met, and she would cry not for what she had done. She had made peace with that long ago. She cried for what had been lost, the innocence, the hope, the dream of a peaceful future. The humans had survived. They had won, but survival had come at a price. The new galactic assembly was formed 3 years after the war. Unlike the Conquered, it was not based on force or domination. It was a voluntary alliance of species who wanted to trade, communicate, and cooperate. Membership was open to any species that accepted the basic principles of mutual respect and non-inference. Humanity was offered a founding seat on the Assembly Council. After much debate, they accepted. The human representative was a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Ilelina Vasquez, a scholar who had spent her life studying alien cultures. At the first assembly meeting, a delegate from the Mortis species asked her directly, how should we understand what happened during the war? Your people seemed so peaceful before, and then you became the most effective warriors the galaxy has ever seen. What are you really, Dr. Vasquez? Thought carefully before answering. We are a species that learned to love fiercely and fight without limit. Our history is written in blood because we learned early that mercy to the merciless is suicide. We hoped the stars would be different. You taught us they are not. She paused and looked around the assembly chamber at the dozens of species watching her. But I want you to understand something. What you saw during the war was not who we want to be. It was who we become when we have no choice. We became warriors because our children were murdered and no one offered us justice. We became killers because killers came to our home. Now we have a choice. We can live in fear of each other, always waiting for the next war. Or we can try to build something better, something where species cooperate instead of compete, where children can look at the stars and dream of friends instead of enemies. She smiled slightly. We choose hope. We always have, even when hope seems foolish, even when the universe seems determined to prove us wrong. That is the human way. We hope, we dream, we build, and when someone tries to destroy what we love, we fight with everything we have. So yes, we can be terrible. We prove that, but we would rather be kind. We would rather be peaceful. We would rather be friends. The question is not what we are. The question is what we can become together. The speech was met with silence, then slowly applause began. It spread through the assembly chamber until every species was acknowledging the words of the human representative. It was not universal acceptance. Some species still feared humanity. Some still hated them for what they had done. During the war, trust would take generations to build, but it was a beginning. Across the galaxy, children of many species grew up hearing stories about the human war. The tales became legends, the legends became myths. Special forces became almost supernatural beings in the telling. Silent killers who could walk through walls and strike without warning. Parents told their children, be good to the humans, be honest with them, be kind to them, because if you are not, they might send the quiet ones, the ones who do not wear uniforms, the ones who smile politely and speak softly, the ones who know 100 ways to kill you before you can scream. This was not entirely healthy. The humans did not want to be feared like monsters, but there was a practical benefit. In the decades following the war, no species attempted to threaten or attack humanity. The memory of what had happened to the conquered was too fresh. The fear of human retaliation was too strong. Peace, it seemed, could be built on many foundations. Sometimes fear was one of them. 50 years after the war, the last survivor of the original Special Forces teams passed away. Her name was Maria Santos, and she had been one of the youngest operators during the conflict. She had lived a quiet life after the war, working as a gardener and refusing all interviews or public attention. At her funeral, attended by hundreds of former colleagues and their descendants, her daughter read from a letter Maria had written years before. And I have thought a lot about what we did during the war, about the people we killed, about the terror we created. Some nights I cannot sleep because of the memories. Some days I cannot look at my reflection because of what I see there, but I do not regret what I did. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the universe forced us to become killers to protect our children. I regret that peace could only come after so much death. If I have one hope, it is this: that my grandchildren never have to do what I did, that they can live in a galaxy where species talk instead of fight, where children are safe, where the skills I learned are never needed. Again, we called ourselves special forces. We thought we were special because we could kill so efficiently. But I have learned that the truly special thing is not killing, it is choosing not to kill when you have the power to destroy. It is building instead of burning. It is hoping instead of fearing. To my children and grandchildren, do not be proud of what I did. Be proud of what I stopped doing. Be proud that I came home and planted flowers instead of graves. Be proud that I chose to create life instead of taking it. And if anyone ever threatens you the way the conquered threatened us, remember what we were capable of. Remember that inside every human is a warrior waiting to emerge. Use that knowledge wisely. Use it to prevent wars, not to start them, because the best use of a weapon is to never use it at all. Maria's daughter finished reading and looked out at the crowd. Among them were faces from a dozen different species, former enemies who had become friends, former victims who had become allies. The galaxy had changed in 50 years, and humanity had changed with it. 100 years after the war, the events were so distant that they seemed like ancient history. The memorial at the site of the lunar station had become a place of pilgrimage. Beings from across the galaxy came to pay their respects to the 217 people whose deaths had started the conflict. They left flowers, tokens, and messages of peace. On the 100th anniversary, a ceremony was held at the memorial. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Assembly attended. Speeches were given about the cost of war and the value of peace. The keynote speaker was a young Sarani diplomat named Telver. She was the great granddaughter of one of the officers who had served under Velkith. Her family had carried the shame of that association for generations. She had dedicated her life to reconciliation. 100 years ago, she said, my people made a terrible choice. We saw a species we thought was weak and we tried to dominate them. We killed their children. To show our power, we expected them to submit. She paused, looking at the names carved in stone. Instead, they showed us what true strength looks like. Not the strength of weapons or fleets. The strength of purpose, the strength of love, the strength of a species willing to sacrifice everything to protect their own. The humans called them special forces. We called them demons, but they were neither. They were parents, siblings, friends. They were ordinary people who chose to become extraordinary because they had no other choice. Today, we remember the victims of the lunar station, but we also remember what came after, not just the war and the death, the peace, the assembly, the century of cooperation that has followed. The humans taught us a lesson with their terrible strength. Now they teach us a different lesson with their willingness to forgive. Both lessons are important. Both lessons should be remembered. She placed a flower at the base of the memorial to the 217. Your deaths were tragic and unjust, but something grew from that tragedy, a galaxy that learned from its mistakes, a future that is Better than the past, we will never forget what happened here, and we will never stop working to ensure it never happens again. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence, then slowly the crowd dispersed. A species that had once been enemies walked together through the memorial gardens, sharing memories and hopes. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or victims, as partners, as teachers, as proof that even the most terrible conflicts could lead to lasting peace. The special forces had shown the galaxy what humans could become when pushed to their limits. But the century of peace showed something more important: what humans could build when given the chance. In the end, that was the true measure of a species, not their capacity for destruction, but their capacity for creation, not their ability to fight, but their ability to forgive, not their strength in war, but their strength in peace. Humanity had proven they possessed both kinds of strength, and that more than any military victory. When was what made them truly special? The stars still glittered with possibility. Children of many species still looked up and dreamed of what they might find out there, and thanks to the choices made by humans and aliens alike, those children had a future worth dreaming about. The war was over. Peace had begun. And somewhere in whatever afterlife existed, 43 children who had loved looking at stars could finally rest. Their deaths had not been meaningless. Their memory would live forever, and the galaxy they had dreamed of exploring had become a place where others could explore without fear. That was the legacy of the human special forces, not death, though they had dealt plenty, not fear, though they had created plenty, but peace, hard-won, blood-bought, precious peace, the kind of peace that only those who have known war can truly appreciate, the kind of peace worth fighting for, the kind of peace worth dying for, the kind of peace that made everything worth it. In the end, humanity had shown no mercy to their enemies, but they had shown infinite mercy to the future, and that made all the